Yes, you're good.
Great. Again, thank you so much, Bob and Mei for having me. Look, racism exists, discrimination exists, and this is no secret. I've experienced it myself constantly, and we see it in the news. Many of us have experienced it in the API community during the COVID crisis, but the message today is clear. The answer to racial and ethnic discrimination is not more discrimination, and it's certainly not state-sanctioned discrimination. And you've heard what Prop 209 is, but this is what Prop 16 wants to jettison from our state constitution. The state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. So what is so controversial about that? And how did we get to the point where we are now advocating for discrimination in the law? The words affirmative action do not appear in ACA 5 and now Prop 16. It's about discrimination, legalized discrimination. And I acknowledge the problem that the proponents are trying to solve, that we should be working to increase representation of women and minorities in our public institutions. And I personally share that goal. But let's look at some of the numbers in higher education, for example. And I know, Bob, you shared some. So since in 1994, prior to the enactment of Proposition 209, UC freshman enrollment for Black and African Americans have almost doubled. Freshman enrollment for Hispanic Latinos increased by almost 243%. White first-year freshman enrollment is equal to what it was in 1994. And here's a recent headline from the LA Times. UC admits largest, most diverse class ever of Californian freshmen. We have some of the most diverse universities in the country. Our public universities and colleges are some of the most diverse in the state. But knowing this, why would we all of a sudden inject race into our enrollment process? So I kind of want to offer up some solutions, right? Because we always talk about the problem and people always complain, well, what about solutions? So here are some solutions. How do we grow equality? We need to improve our existing system and institutions. Let's look at our public schools. Our public schools are letting down students in some of the most vulnerable areas of the state. Too many low-income minority students are not getting the education they deserve in primary and secondary grades. So for example, 21% of African-American students who graduated in 2018 were considered prepared for college or career, compared to 52% of white students and 74% of Asian students. And this is absolutely not acceptable. We owe it to these students to push for comprehensive school reforms and funding so all students are prepared for higher education. Many of us here today, including myself, have fought for school reform for years, but instead of improving our schools and ensuring kids receive the best education possible, too many politicians resist change. Now is the time for this change, and it's not time for Prop 16. Just consider right now your zip code is the biggest determination of how good your education will be in school. So if a mom in a low-income neighborhood wants to send her child to a school across town that provides a better program for her child, she's forbidden from allowing her child to go to that school. We have decades of laws, rigid institutions, and economic circumstances that determine where your zip code will be, but now your zip code determines what education you get. This is wrong, and we need to fix it. Every time a bill is introduced in Sacramento to provide minority and low-income students with more public school options, it's resisted by so many. Some who live in nice neighborhoods with schools they are happy with or put their kids in charter schools. In fact, right after ACA 5, now Prop 16, was approved by the legislature, Sacramento politicians cut funding to schools who need it most. And in 2020, we need to look to better solutions than legalized racial discrimination. And this is what Prop 16 is. As the most diverse state in the nation, we need to come together to fight this kind of wrong-headed policy. And I am urging all of us to spread the word and to urge the voters to reject this. I mean, this is so incredibly important. And again, I want to thank Bob and Mei for bringing all of us together to fight against Prop 16.